1. Author and error Jalal al-Din Rumi, Iyalingti 1273 CE, was born in Balkh, modern Afghanistan, fled the Mongol invasions westward with his family, and eventually settled in Konya, modern Turkey, where he spent most of his life as a respected Sufi teacher and Islamic jurist. His philosophical spiritual transformation was catalyzed by his encounter with the wandering mystic Shams of Tabriz, a relationship of such intensity that Rumi's disciples resented it and eventually, it seems, arranged Shams's disappearance. The grief of this loss became the engine of Rumi's greatest poetry. He discovered that the specific form of human longing for the lost beloved, for the transcendent, for return, was itself the philosophical key to understanding the soul's situation. He is simultaneously a poet of extraordinary beauty, a rigorous philosophical theologian, and a practical teacher of the Mevlevi, whirling dervish order he founded. 2. The book's genesis, the Masnavi spiritual couplets, 6 books of rhyming Persian couplets totaling roughly 25,000 verses, was composed over the last years of Rumi's life at the insistence of his beloved disciple, Husam al-Din, who pressed him repeatedly to produce a major poetic philosophical work. The poem is a river stories within stories, digressions that illuminate the main narrative from unexpected angles, sudden plunges into philosophical argument, and returns to lyrical narrative. Jami called it the Quran in Persian. Without it, the Persian mystical tradition would lack its most comprehensive philosophical poetic articulation, and the global tradition of understanding love as a philosophical category would be diminished. 3. Main themes, separation and longing as the soul's fundamental condition. The Masnavi opens with the image of the reed flute, nay, crying because it has been cut from the reed bed. This is the paradigm for the human soul, separated from its divine origin, longing for return. Longing, shak, is not a problem to be solved, but a spiritual path to be traveled. Love, ishq, as the supreme philosophical category. What moves the universe? Not rational calculation, but ishq, divine love, which creates, sustains, and draws all things back to their source. The Masnavi argues that reason, aql, is necessary but insufficient. At the highest level of spiritual reality, love transcends and encompasses rational categories. The soul's ascent through levels of being. Rumi traces a hierarchy of being: mineral, vegetable, animal, human, angel, and argues that the soul's evolutionary journey does not end with human consciousness, but extends beyond it, toward reunion with the divine source. Each level of being is characterized by a form of consciousness appropriate to it. The pedagogical relationship between teacher and disciple. How is mystical knowledge transmitted? Not through texts alone, but through the transformative relationship between a murshid, spiritual guide, and a murid, disciple, in which the teacher's presence, love, and authority serve as the catalyst for the disciple's spiritual development. 4. Summary. The Masnavi begins with the reed flute's lament, an image of such philosophical density that Rumi spends the rest of 6 books unpacking its implications. The reed cries because it remembers the reed bed. The lover cries because they remember the beloved. The soul cries because it remembers God. Separation is the condition that makes love possible, and love is the engine of return. The poem proceeds through an apparently bewildering succession of stories: the tale of the lion and the hare, on trust and reliance on God; the caliph and the reed player, on the transformative power of music and love; the elephant in the dark room, on partial perception and the limits of individual knowledge; Moses and the shepherd, on the relativity of religious forms; and hundreds more. Each story is simultaneously narrative, philosophical argument, and mystical teaching. The philosophical structure underlying the narrative chaos is Neoplatonic emanationism filtered through Islamic Sufi theology. The universe emanates from God, evolves upward through levels of being, and is drawn back toward its source by the magnetism of divine love. Human beings occupy the crucial middle position, embodied enough to experience the full weight of separation, spiritual enough to recognize and respond to the call of return. The Masnavi does not end. It breaks off mid-sentence in the 6th book. This is philosophically appropriate. The return to the source is not a narrative conclusion but an ongoing process. 5. Deep dive analysis. The opening 18 verses of the Masnavi, the Song of the Reed, Nainami, compress the entire poem's philosophy into a form of such poetic and philosophical density that they reward a lifetime of attention. The philosophical argument embedded in the image deserves unpacking. The reed, nay, is cut from the reed bed, dried, shaped into a flute, and from this wound and severance it produces music. The paradox is structural. The separation is the condition of the music. The music is the expression of the longing for return. Without the cut, there would be no sound. Without the sound, there would be no evidence of what was lost and sought. This is not merely metaphorical. Rumi is making a philosophical claim about the structure of human consciousness. We are constituted by the awareness of our own incompleteness, and this awareness, properly developed and directed, is not a problem, but the very path toward what completes it. The longing, shock, for God is the closest thing to God available in ordinary consciousness. It is, in a sense, God's own love for God, experienced from the perspective of a separated soul. The philosophical tradition this recalls most is Augustine's restless heart, but there is a crucial difference. For Rumi, the longing is not primarily cognitive, a search for truth, but ontological, a magnetic pull in the structure of being itself. Reason can participate in this pull, but cannot generate it. The most powerful implication is that mystical experience, far from being philosophically irrelevant, is the most direct encounter with the real that consciousness can achieve. This puts the Masnavi in productive tension with rationalist Islamic philosophy, including the Kalam tradition. The strongest objection pressed by orthodox ulama, religious scholars, is that Rumi's equation of divine love with human erotic longing blurs distinctions that Islamic law carefully maintains, and that the antinomian implications, the shepherd whose inappropriate prayer is more beloved by God than Moses' orthodoxy, undermine the authority of Sharia. Rumi's response is embedded in the poem. The exoteric, zahir, is the body of which the esoteric, batin, is the spirit. The law is not abandoned but fulfilled when the inner orientation it aims to cultivate is achieved directly. 6. Key terms and ideas. ISHQ, Persian, Arabic. Divine love or passionate love, the supreme philosophical category in the Masnavi, distinguished from mere affection or calculation. ISHQ is the force that creates and sustains the cosmos, drawing all things toward their source. Shaq, Arabic, shock, longing or yearning, the experiential form that Ishq takes in the separated soul. Rumi argues that shock is itself a form of divine presence. The very desire for God is God's presence in us. Nafs, Arabic, fence, the soul or self, but also the lower ego, the self-enclosed personality that resists the soul's opening toward the divine. The Masnavi's stories often dramatize the struggle between nafs and the soul's deeper desire. Aql, Arabic, aqyal, reason or intellect. For Rumi, both a genuine good and a limitation. Partial aql, the reasoning mind, can reach the threshold of divine reality, but cannot cross it alone. It requires the supplement of love and direct experience. Fana, Arabic, fanaya, annihilation or self-dissolution, the Sufi concept of the dissolution of the ego self in the divine. Not death, but the falling away of the illusion of separateness, the reed becoming one again with the sound it has always been. Batin, zahir, Arabic, inner, outer, esoteric, exoteric. The exoteric is the literal meaning of scripture, the surface of religious law. The esoteric is its inner spiritual content. Rumi consistently privileges the batin while maintaining formal respect for the zahir. 7. Conclusion. The Masnavi permanently established that philosophy and poetry are not separate disciplines when their subject is the nature of consciousness and its relationship to its source. Its influence on Persian literature, Hafez, Jami, and the entire Ghazal tradition, on Sufi practice across the Islamic world, on Turkish culture. Rumi's tomb in Konya is one of the most visited sites in the world, and on the contemporary global market for mystical literature, Rumi is the best-selling poet in the United States, is extraordinary. The most unresolved question: is Rumi's vision of love, as the philosophical category superior to reason, compatible with the rational foundations of Islamic theology, or does it ultimately transcend and undermine them? The essential spirit of the Masnavi, the wound of separation, is not a defect in your nature, it is the place where the music enters. Read it and discover that what you have been calling loneliness may be the beginning of philosophy's deepest inquiry.